The next thing we'll talk about in our discussion on host-based security is system hardening. Now, Unix and Linux actually have several tools built into most distributions and flavors of Unix for hardening hosts. One good example that you may have heard of or worked with in Linux is Bastille. It's basically an automated program that goes through and hardens several aspects of the system. It tightens down permissions and so forth. Now, BSD Unix also has this ability. It actually is invoked through sysinstall or through manual configuration. Solaris and IRIX and other versions of Unix also each have their own tools that are specific to their OSs as well that are fairly easy to use. Once you've learned basically how to use one of the tools, it's not too hard to pick up one of the other ones on a different flavor or distribution. Now, what BSD's tool does, it hardens the devices, it hardens the file system, it restricts accessibility to certain device files and file systems and so forth. There's several different security levels available when configuring this. Now, one thing I will tell you is use this with caution, simply because hardening your system is great and it can make it more secure, but it can also reduce functionality. And in some cases you want to do that. You only want it to be functional to a certain degree and no more, because you don't want to open up your avenue of attack to malicious users or attackers. Hardening security can also render it unusable in some cases, so it's a balance between security and functionality. So use it with caution and kind of do some research and know what you're doing and know what you want out of the system before you use these tools. Let's go ahead and take a look at system hardening in BSD Unix. We're back in our FreeBSD virtual machine. We're going to look at how to configure security. So let's run the sysinstall command and get back to our sysinstall menu. And we need to drop down to configure, and then we can arrow all the way down to security. And we've got a couple different options here. NFS port we're not going to worry about. That's for configuring an NFS client securely. What we want to look at is secure level. So let's say OK. And we've basically got several different levels we can set. We've got disable security levels. We've got secure mode, highly secure mode, and network secure mode. Now, if you want to know what these modes do, simply press F1 for help. And this is basically going to tell you. -1 basically would be the setting that it will set in the system permanently in secure mode. Always run the system in level 0 mode. This is the default value when the system is installed. In secure mode, where immutable and append-only flags may be turned off, all devices may be read or written to subject to their permissions. And you've got secure mode, which is number 1, and basically this tells us that the system immutable and system append-only flags may not be turned off. Disks for mounted file systems and so forth may not be open for writing. Kernel modules may not be loaded or unloaded. So you've got some restrictions there over what you can do in secure mode. Highly secure mode, same thing. Plus, disks may not be open for writing except by mount, whether mounted or not. Basically, it says this level precludes tampering with file systems by unmounting them, but also inhibits running new FS while the system is in multi-user mode. So you'd only be able to load new FS while the system is in single-user mode. In other words, root only. Now, you've also got a network secure mode, which is the same as highly secure mode, except that IP packet filter rules, IP firewall cannot be changed, and so forth. So you've got some security levels here that are set that will tighten security with each subsequent level that you add to the system. Now, for highly secure systems that cannot be altered, you probably want to go to highly secure or network secure mode. For systems that users are actually using file services or other services, I definitely would not put them in high secure mode, but you may want to at least put them in possibly number 1 secure mode or something of that nature. This may be something you have to play with until you get it right, because understand you can render your system unusable for whatever purposes you have it built for if you're not careful. Let's say OK to this, and we're not going to set a secure mode. We've already looked at the secure modes, but we're not going to set one. Let's go ahead and set disable secure levels on here. We're going to say OK. We're going to exit rather. Arrow back up and exit this menu, and then we're going to exit install. And what we would like to do now is take a look at the changes that were made to etcrc.conf, simply because etcrc.conf is where the security level would have been turned on at. Let's take a look at that. If we go all the way down to the bottom, we've got some other settings down there. Kern security level equals 1. That would have been for secure mode. But we've also got kern security level enable equals no, because we chose not to turn it on. If we had went ahead and said yes, go with that, then this entry would say yes. And actually, all we have to do now, whenever we want to enable this, is go into etcrc.conf and set this to yes rather than no, and we can actually turn this on. So we could have also just made these entries in rc.conf if we liked, but if we wanted to, just to make sure we didn't accidentally edit the file wrong, we could have used the sysinstall to add these entries for us. Now, one other thing we could do if we wanted to, and that's use the syscontrol command. If we had typed in sysctl kern.securitylevel equals 1, that also effectively does the same thing. It sets the security level of the kernel to 1. We can do this command line, and that would have changed it until the next reboot. That would not have been a persistent change. So we've seen basically how to harden the kernel, how to harden the system. We've seen the different security levels available to us to harden the system. And keep in mind, this is only one thing we can do. There are many other things we can do to secure the system, but they would involve us going in and setting permissions on files, making sure that we use sudo instead of su, making sure that we don't log into the root account all the time. So there's many facets to securing the system and hardening it down. But we've looked at one way to do this through the security configuration mechanisms in sysinstall.